Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here moderating this session on disrupting healthcare from the inside, the rise of GCCs. Now, we all love talking about healthcare innovation, but let's just be honest. Most of us have a fitness tracker reminding us to move while we conveniently ignore it from the comfort of our chairs. Fortunately, GCCs are doing a lot more than just counting steps, right? Especially when it comes to driving real change, leveraging technology, improving efficiencies, delivering better outcomes. Global capability centers, and particularly those in India, it won't be wrong to say they are leading the charge, right? These centers are no longer just support centers, but they are becoming architects of transformation across the entire healthcare ecosystem. And we are talking about an ecosystem that covers the four P's of healthcare: patients, payer, provider, and pharma. And we are incredibly lucky today to have a panel that represents these different perspectives, right? We have Bala representing the payer industry, Murali representing the provider industry, and Suneela from the pharma industry sharing their perspectives. That just leaves one missing piece, the patient. But not to worry, I'll gladly take on that role. In fact, my personal success metric for this session is how little I speak and how much we get to hear from our incredible panelists. I'll request our leaders to do a short introduction as they start sharing their perspectives. So with that, let's dive right in and hear from the experts in the room. Right, Bala, we'll start with you from a healthcare payer standpoint. Right, where do you see the industry and how do you see GCC helping payers improve efficiencies? Right, and this could be across areas like claims, fraud detection, patient engagement, and so on and so forth. Maybe a quick introduction from your side, and would love to hear your thoughts on this.
Thank you, Bharat. It's great to be at an Everest event, as always. And good morning to everyone on LinkedIn. I hope the panelists are able to engage you, and these insights will help you down the road. My name is Bala Sankaranarayanan. I've been a digital health evangelist all my life. Spent more than 3 decades in pursuing healthcare in one way, shape, or form. I have been involved with the GCC industry for quite a while now, since before GCC was the buzzword in the industry, and most recently I've been involved with a payvider GCC, as in a GCC that does both the payer and the provider business and informatics support, and scaled it to more than 4,000 people. So I hope the insights from my journey will help all of the GCCs that are watching and the people involved in hopefully setting up or involved with a healthcare GCC of their own at this point of time. So, Bharat, to your question around payers and how are the GCCs disrupting the overall payer enterprise, let me take a step back and talk about GCCs in the first place. I think the biggest value accretion that happens from GCCs are that, as with most enterprises, particularly so in the healthcare enterprises, none of these divisions or departments talk to each other. So my claims, my product development, my provider network management, my actuarial, my legal, my clinical care coordination, utilization management, most of these divisions are siloed in their own way. And of course, informatics and the actual core operations are also siloed in their own way. So when you look at GCCs, the biggest thing that they do is that the remit of all of these GCCs is to make sure that every pocket of the enterprise is having a space within this GCC. And what that does is that each of these divisions talk to each other seamlessly across technology and business operations, across all of the value chain elements within the payer space in this case. And when you talk about the innovation agenda, I think it is important to mention that most GCCs have a cost optimization agenda that is upfront and center. That is probably 50 to 60% of the focus. But more importantly and more recently, the innovation agenda is coming to the fore, wherein we're talking about how can I participate in product development? How can I participate in product engineering? How can I participate in shaping the enterprise agenda that going forward? And that may include, for example, looking out for young startups that are very interesting in the payer space and saying, hey, this is a very, very cool thing. Do we want to acquire them or make them part of our portfolio? You mentioned a lot of things around shaping the enterprise itself, whether it is claims, clinical care coordination. Let me take one example of claims, right? And briefly talk about how GCCs are making a difference there. Claims, as we all know, is the heart of the payer platform, right? Ultimately, when you look at it, 70% of the work is around claims, right? In some way, shape, or form. And when you look at uh, the issues that we face in claims, 70% or more are not actually issues related to claims. They are issues related to how have we set up the product or the benefits? How have we set up the provider network? How have we set up the enrollment engine? And when you look at these upstream issues impacting claims or the claims issues impacted by medical policy or impacting utilization management downstream, the connection and the connected value chain is so important for the healthcare enterprises. And that is where GCCs are playing a huge role today, whether it is talking about connected healthcare, whether it is looking at AI ML POCs that essentially manage the upstream and downstream activities around how can I do the upstream activities better to learn, as in get the machine learning and the enterprise LLM, if you want, to learn better and to process claims faster and more accurately, whether it is from a patient perspective or from a financial perspective. This is so important for all enterprises, particularly payers. So uh, just to make sure that I don't take too much of time, this was just one example, but there are so many examples within the payer space wherein, because of the unique way in which the GCCs are architected and set up, and the teams are architected and set up, they are able to add so much more value to the enterprise than from within the enterprise itself. So it's almost like the case of the tail wagging the dog in some shape, right? So because we are the enterprise, but we are an outpost, and today we are actively participating in shaping the way the enterprise works and the way the enterprise takes healthcare forward for tomorrow.
Great. No, thanks, Bala. I love that example of tail wagging the dog. Right? Murli, would be great to hear from you. Right? When you look at healthcare provider ecosystem, right? We see organizations moving more towards value-based care. We see opportunity for GCCs in driving patient-centric innovation. Right? Curious to hear from you, and especially how tech is playing a key role. All yours.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Pleasure to be part of this esteemed panel, and thank you for this opportunity. I do want to start a little bit introducing myself. Murali Krishna, I lead Providence Global Center based out of India. Part of my job as the Chief Global Officer is also to work with our colleagues and counterparts on identifying new opportunities, new markets, and new models of care as we define together the future of health. We started in India in 2020, late 2019, when we were building it out, and we hit pandemic. We hit the pandemic. We tried to power through the 2 years, both through the 2, 3 waves that we had. The intent of really starting out was twofold, right? One is with the advent of big tech and with the advent of large enterprises getting into healthcare, traditional provider health systems had a chance to step back and reinvent themselves or try and work with multiple other teams to figure out what the future was all about. End of the day, the core objective for both the models was to improve care, improve access to care, make care more affordable, and make care more equitable. So, what we do here today at Providence really is we build this technology center to help improve patient outcomes, improve caregiver experiences, and build future ready digital capabilities for Providence. And now that we're a few years into it, we're also doing that for US health systems. In summary, the objective is to drive digital transformation healthcare and build the business of Providence at scale. We're about 1,500, 1,600 engineers today who are technologists and healthcare domain experts who are focused on healthcare transformation, both for Providence and playing our part in US healthcare as well. I call this job, I personalize this really well with our colleagues here. I call this job a job that enables the hand that provides care. And that's exactly what we do here. We are leveraging technology, we are leveraging innovation to transform care. We use cutting edge technologies like cloud, data, artificial intelligence, machine learning, Gen AI now that have immense potential to not only digitally enhance and transform care, but also create these scalable solutions, improve access to data, improve experiences, and more importantly, something as fundamental as giving time back, addressing the three most important issues in healthcare today, which my colleagues here would agree. One is workforce shortage. Two is workforce burnout. People have seen that through the pandemic as well. And three is how do we get systems to talk to each other and how do we make both the patient and consumer, basically the consumer, patient, physician, clinician experience seamless and easy, which I sometimes call as consumerization of healthcare. So that's the objective that we have here, focusing on experiences and outcomes leveraging technology. As you would have already seen, coming to GCCs, why are we here? We're here obviously for the talent and technology. The third piece is very critical. An amazing ecosystem, as you can see on the call also. One of the reasons why we are here and why we set up here as one of the early provider health systems was to leverage and tap into the ecosystem we have in the region. We have pharma, we have life sciences, we have healthcare, we have payers. This, in some way, is the pharma, life sciences, and healthcare capital of the world, if I have to put it the right way. We have our technology partners, we have our consulting partners to bring this together and couple with the 3-4 decades of expertise that most of them have allowed for us not only to build faster, but also enable some of our digital charters very fast compared to what we would have done ideally. Our aim is to be a global transformation hub for healthcare and a value creator. We spoke about GCCs. Why we are here was not just the traditional cost arbitrage. Why we are here today is really to be a true transformation hub, a true value creator for Providence. A big part of our job is also to deliver digitally enhanced experiences, but more importantly, how do we bring innovation in healthcare and how do we play this important part of defining the future of health? And that's the little role that I'm very proud to say we work with a lot of our partners like yourselves here and are making an effort towards.
Got it. Thanks, Murali. Great to hear that. Suneela, I would love to hear your views. Right, I've had the fortune of overseeing the pharma industry and the GCC growth over the last few years, and it's nothing short of incredible. Right, truly keeping the mantra as getting drugs faster to patients. And today we see GCC supporting across areas like R&D, regulatory, patient safety, commercial operations, and so on. How do you see GCCs playing a role from the pharma standpoint?
Thank you, Bharat. And quickly, first to introduce myself and my organization. So I'm Suneela Thatte, responsible for Merck Healthcare's R&D hub in India. And I've been in drug development and clinical research industry for a little over 30 years now. Um, Merck has actually leveraged the Indian environment for GCCs quite effectively. We have our IT services center supporting not just our pharma business but our other two businesses, which is life sciences, the specialty chemical, as well as electronics. And then we also have business enablement functions. Healthcare R&D is the youngest kid on the block. We are in the operations for about 4 years, but in these 4 years we have experienced exponential growth. And it's not just the story about numbers, as you rightly said, Bharat. It's all about value creation. And I think gone are the days where we have to really say that, we are here because, we are driving efficiency, we are doing process improvement. It's really the innovation that's the key word today when it comes to pharma. And it's a consistent story, not just Merck, but if you look at any pharma company, they really are looking at their capability centers, particularly in India, as technology hubs or technology powerhouses. And that is so important for pharma today, given where we are, especially on the drug development. I mean, that's what I will talk first about. And drug development, everybody feels that, okay, um, what's the big deal about it? But, for one drug to come to market, pharma industry has to spend about $1 billion, and it's a journey that takes 10 to 12 years. Now, if you look at patients, and I want to bring a little bit of a patient angle here, because you said that the fourth P is missing, and that's the most important P, by the way, because that's why we all exist, right? And that's why we come to work every day. So if you look at patients who are, like, let's say cancer patients or patients who are having neurological disorders, 10 to 12 years is a very long time, and patients don't have that much time. So the game in drug development today is really how can we accelerate it? How can we make the discovery more cost effective? And that's where technology comes in big way. And what can be a better place to leverage that technology, rather than more than the GCC? Because look at GCCs in pharma today, they're like a microcosm of the organization, right? It's like a replica of the organization. And coupled with that, the technological advances that you see in India, it's a perfect place where you can actually play with technology. So some of the low hanging fruits have already become reality, because a lot of pharma GCCs, particularly, lot of work that we do is documentation. And I'm not really referring to documentation as a administrative talk here, task here. When it comes to pharma, documentation is extremely important, because I mean, drug discovery starts with approaching regulators with a concept, and that has to be supported with lot of documentation. Now you can imagine this is the first target we are hitting, where we are using technology, we are using AI and machine learning to make this process very, very efficient. The second step and that's something we see has been well leveraged, whether it comes to our regulatory submissions, our safety submissions, which are all critical to keep the drug discovery game going. That's all, we see that it's getting automated. We are using AI in a big way here, creating a lot of scientific content. I mean, that's also important, and that's the other area where technology is coming. And which are some of the areas where technology is being, I mean, this is still, I would say, work in progress, not yet become like a norm. But the entire drug discovery, if you see, I mean, it's a very complex process, but let me, simplify it. So it all starts by identifying targets in the human body where you want to act on to moderate the course of a disease. Then next step is to identify drug molecules, which could be chemicals or biological, which are going to help attack that target. Then you have to do some in vitro experiments to come up with a formulation that you can test first in animals, ultimately in humans by way of clinical trials. And then this whole bit of data needs to go to the regulators. This process, simple as it may sound, it takes 10 years and $1 billion. So the target identification and screening of the drug candidates, this is where we have seen AI ML being used in a big way, making this process efficient. Because to come up with a target, and a drug, you have to screen literally tens and thousands of compounds. So this is where technology is helping us a big way. And pharma companies are taking advantage of the fact that they have these teams in India where technology adoption is relatively easy uh, compared to rest of the world. Maybe just call it the IT culture that we have, or just the age group, right? I mean, that may be some of the things that are driving it. But this becomes like a natural place where you actually see that this in what more the drug discovery that happens in vitro and in vivo, meaning in lab and in animal or human system, is shifting in silico. And that's where we see big kind of leaps coming forward. And if that can shorten some of these processes, ultimately the benefit is going to go to the patients. The other big area where there is focus, that you see pharma getting focus, is clinical trials. Now, clinical trials, it's a multi-phase, for the want of better word, I'm going to call it experiment, but this is a very well-controlled and ethically balanced experiment that we all must remember. That's where it all starts from writing of study protocol, and there is plethora of data that you can actually go through today. And if human beings have to go through that data, it's going to take us years. But today, with the use of technology, with the use of AI, we are actually getting data insights which are telling us, okay, how should we write protocol for a particular disease, what are the parameters that we should go after. And that's making sure that our success probability is going to be better. We are going to get patients faster. Talking about patients and talking about the sites where clinical trial typically happens, again, here the data is being used in a big way to see, okay, if I need patients with suffering from a certain disease to be part of a clinical trial, where will I find those patients, which are the physicians who are treating these patients. Today we have all that data available. It's helping pharma to do smarter selection of the sites where the clinical trials can take place. And as much as we can crunch this, the benefit is finally going to the fourth most important P, that's the patient. Shifting gear and talking a little bit about the commercialization, here again we see that many pharma companies are actually driving their commercial excellence organizations from India very effectively. And by analyzing treatment outcome, cost effectiveness, and real world evidence, we see that these GCCs are empowering their commercial teams not just in India but globally to develop impactful strategies, and that is helping us in expanding patient access. So, multiple areas across various functions in pharma, you see GCCs actually playing a key role, and this is only going to increase in times to come, given the technology advances and adoption that you see in India, particularly.
All right. This is extremely interesting to hear, right? Especially the effort that goes into getting drugs to patient, and the focus on patient in that category itself. I would want to build a bit more on the theme on AI and digital innovation in itself, right? From predictive analytics to patient engagement, drug discovery, and Suneela, we heard a bit about drug discovery and how data is able to accelerate with the right protocol design and so on. I'm also curious to hear, let's say, Murali, if you could share a bit more about how data AI innovation is helping you accelerate, outcomes, improve patient and other employee experience. It would be good to hear from you.
Fantastic. So our core strategy, when I look at our what I'm trying to say is our transformation strategy, Bharath, is built on exactly this: digital capabilities. Simplify, modernize, innovate. That's what we built out as we started our transformation journey 5 years ago. And the intent was to accelerate some of these capabilities in data, cybersecurity, cloud, enabling rapid AI validation and implementation. We prepared the digital infrastructure in such a way that we are AI ready in years to come. And today we are much more focused on how we want to use AI across the enterprise. Obviously, we speak about responsible AI, secure AI, ethical AI, but our primary goal is to really use AI to tackle one of the biggest challenges in healthcare and in health systems, which is reducing administrative burden. So that's one part. If you look at the outcomes we are targeting through our digital transformation journey, and to your point about tech and AI, we're talking about reducing clinician and caregiver burnout. We're talking about elevating experiences for patients and caregivers. When I say caregivers, I'm talking about our employees included across the globe. We are also talking about enhancing quality of care. You mentioned value-based care, right? What is that we can do in addition to building innovative products that we can bring to the table to help our clinicians, physicians, and caregivers? At Providence, what we've done over the years, when I look at some of these efforts, and I can break it down to one or two per section, when I look at, let's say, we are talking about reducing clinician caregiver burnout, we're talking about tools and services that we brought to the table, like predictive scheduling, no-shows, clinical data abstraction. We're talking about consolidating to one Epic instance. We're one of the largest Epic installations or instances in the world in healthcare. We're talking about one ERP to improve not only reporting, but making life easy for caregivers across the entire ecosystem at Providence. We're talking about digital experiences and engagements for our customer using AI, self-service using AI, documentation. We leverage Copilot really well. Both Microsoft, through Meta, ServiceNow are our key partners who not only help us partner on some of these important efforts, but also bring in the latest and the best tech stack that is relevant, more importantly, for our ecosystem. Not to mention internal tools leveraging AI like ChatGPT. How do we onboard our caregivers? How do we simplify across the ecosystem? Those are a few areas that we focus on, or rather, we've leveraged technology and AI to help improve. Not to mention one thing that's very important, my colleague Bala mentioned about claims. Improving health system performance is another really big priority in healthcare today, keeping in mind headwinds healthcare is facing over the recent years. System productivity, operations, performance, sustainability becomes really important. How are we leveraging our technology infrastructure, our clinical operations, our service desk, our cybersecurity, and using this cloud first modern infrastructure to be able to determine, predict, and deliver efficiencies across the enterprise, across the entire patient life cycle has been our focus more recently. Bharat.
Got it. Bala, curious to hear from you, right? And if you can also touch upon impact of AI in areas like claims, some of the regulatory considerations that that would typically come in. That would be good to hear.
So, as both Suneela and Murali were saying, GCCs are in the center of this transformation in terms of leveraging digital transformation and deep technologies to say, hey, how can we influence the future of the enterprise, right? So that is very much in the game at this point of time. Now, I believe that GCCs have a unique advantage in terms of, for example, AI adoption, particularly because of the fact that there are no barriers that otherwise would have existed if the enterprise were working with a third party organization. So typically, there are some crown jewels that are never exposed to the third party organization. And because GCCs are part of the enterprise, those barriers don't exist, which gives us an end to end view typically of the data foundation, for example. And for any AI model to work, you need the data foundation and a great understanding of that, right? So, as enterprises go through the phase, it's a typical death by POCs, and then which goes into how do I then derive value from these POCs and how do I scale them up to production scale. Data becomes an extremely important thing. Another muscle that is important, and GCCs are learning that very, very fast, is the business orchestration muscle, which is how do I connect with multiple divisions or departments in the enterprise, including external partners, and sort of work with them to drive specific outcomes, whether it is related to AI or otherwise, right? So, I think we were talking about claims. I think one of the questions was around claims decisions being managed by AI. a very sensitive topic, and because it's a very human thing to be impacted by the decision of, hey, whether my claim is paid out or not. I think there are very I think sad incidents that have taken place in the recent past as well. A large payer CEO was actually gunned down by a dissatisfied individual. uh, I think, the human emotion aside, it is inevitable that we try and drive value accretion through automation. And the way I see it is, AI engines that deal with claims decision making essentially are learning how to understand the benefits involved, understand the provider networks, understand the enrollment engine, understand how decisions have been made from a human judgment perspective, and then try and replicate that. So it's a question of when and not if, for most enterprises that have not yet triggered this. But in my opinion, I think most payer enterprises are already having some sort of AI influence in the claims processing at this point of time, whether it is 100% or 70% or 50%, or do I only push through high dollar value claims through this? Do I only push through complex claims? Do I only push through my own provider system related claims? That can differ from organization to organization. But I think it's a question of when, not if.
Got it. Got it. Interesting perspectives. Just taking a slight digression for some of our listeners, we have an offer for you. We recently published a report looking at how organizations are structured. Right. We'll share a link to accessing this research on the chat window. Feel free to showcase if you're interested in learning more about the research. Feel free to sign up for that, and we'll be happy to follow up on it. Getting back to our conversation on all things healthcare and GCCs, right? We saw a bit about AI, digital, a bit about regulatory side as well. I want to shift gears and talk more around the whole piece on talent and capability building, right? The best part of this conversation is we're not getting into the why part of the GCCs. We're already starting into the how the GCCs are doing this, recognizing the potential out here, and talent will be a critical element to this. And I'm curious to hear, maybe Sunila, I'd love to hear from you as you look at skills and capabilities, resources who are part of the entire drug development process, right? From molecular formulations to having a visibility of the care process and so on. What are some of the things you are adopting from a talent management standpoint that's working well for you?
Sure. So, I mean, talent management, first of all, needs to be looked at very holistically, right? And um, most GCCs, I mean, I think, what I see today in the market is unfortunately more of a reaction where, okay, I need this talent, let's go after it. The way we are looking at it, Bharat, is slightly different, and hopefully more and more people also are embarking. I mean, I do see that people are doing this at various degrees, but I think GCCs have to look at what talent they need proactively and start building that talent database in India, because we all know that academically we have very very well qualified people in India. I mean, there is absolutely no doubt about that. I mean, if you just look at the medical talent here, or if you look at the pharma, or the biochemical talent available, there is no doubt about it. But there is a gap that needs to be bridged between industry and academia, and that's the first kind of aspect where we focus when it comes to talent management. And we have partnership with certain academia, and I see that pharma GCCs are largely doing it. So that's actually very very heartening to see that there are tie-ups with medical colleges, with pharma institutions, with universities. Perhaps all of us are going after the same universities, and little bit of an alignment in terms of us adopting specific universities will help. But anyway, that's a discussion for another day. but essentially making sure that we help academia to make their talent more industry ready. That's where I think this whole thing starts. And then typically for GCCs in India, and this is actually not just for pharma, but I'm sure this is industry agnostic, you get in this young talent which that is hungry for growth. The key is to keep them on the growth path and the learning path always. So how can you create learning opportunities and also addressing the growths, the myths around growth? Growth is not just that I'm getting promotion or my title is changing. Growth is I am acquiring new skills. And that's where again this whole the things which are happening on the technology scene are very good, because we GCCs today are actually looking at creating talent that is not just expert in their own field, the let's say the medical or the pharma, but also kind of coupling that with the AI intelligence and AI literacy. And that's where I think this can not only help us engage our talent, because the way to do this is really acquire the talent young, train them in the ways of working that we want, and engage them so that they have a longer runway with your organization. Because otherwise we are only going to see people, okay, I need this, let me look around and get this person in from another industry. Yes, to certain extent all of us will have to do that, let's be honest here, but how can we create the talent? That's going to be a bigger thing, and that's what has been our mantra: getting the talent through the door early, engaging them, putting them on growth assignment. And the beauty of GCC is that you are operating in a completely global environment. So somebody, if you have a talented employee here, there's no reason why that person cannot support a global initiative, a global process improvement initiative, for example, or even things like culture transformation. I mean, we've done that increasingly, and we feel that that has helped us tremendously in engaging our talent and making sure that they are kind of bringing their best to the table day in and day out. So that's what I think is there. And I just want to also add that gone are the days where we can just focus on our core area. We have to really see how we are working in terms of the global context and the technology context. And that's where how we are also encouraging our talent to adopt some of these things, because everybody talks about AI, ML, and all these cool things. And but at the back of the mind, that question is also there, that because of AI, am I going to lose my job? So the future belongs to people who can work with AI, not to people who are scared of AI and not adopting it. That's the message that needs to be given, and making sure that you're creating a talent pool that's future ready to work in that future context.
Got it. No, I think a lot of good points on that, including collaboration with external ecosystem, building not just process expertise, but a lot of business and technological domain as well. Murali, curious to hear from you. And the little I've interacted with you in the past has left me wanting to learn more, right? Especially when it comes to creating that sense of purpose in a offshore entity, right? And I'm using the word offshore entity loosely to describe GCC, but often it's viewed that way. But
Yeah,
it's all the more important to create that sense of purpose and belongingness and strive for
absolutely.
that outcomes, right? So curious to hear some of the
Love it.
initiatives you have given.
Love it. No, I'll break it up into two parts because I was pretty excited to hear what Suneela was saying. I've been a big fan of two things: reskill and upskill. And that's going to be the core of all global centers that are already existing and centers that are yet to be set up. That, let's say, centers that are coming through over this year. We already have a rich talent base. How do you use them? How do you leverage them to go build further is going to be very, very critical for the future, especially around digital transformation. How do you drive business outcomes, innovation, and how do you build talent for the future? When I say that, not just technology skills, but also important to build what we need for the future, leadership skills. So those are things that I wanted to mention. Coming back specific to what you called out, when we started this journey, we were looking at talent, one that is ready to build for the future, learn a completely new space, healthcare, and the challenges around it and the opportunities. But more importantly, create a purpose and belonging. Like I said, I call this job a job with a purpose. We enable the hands that provide care. So our 170-year history at Providence allowed for us to build the values and culture very early in an extension, as an extension to who we are in at the headquarters or in the US. There was a lot of appetite in and from the talent coming in to do beyond what they're asked to do. Part of our existence here is not just about building healthcare technologies, building healthcare for the future, but also improving communities around us. So this additional component up and above your job really allowed for great belongingness within our organization. Our 170 years of existence, our culture around compassion, empathy, serving those who are poor and vulnerable was a very, very compelling cause for engineers who joined us to see how technology is contributing beyond just the consumers that use them. So those were two, three things that excited our talent and also roots us down to our culture and who we are. There's a third thing, Bharat, which I'm personally excited to, which is to come to work every day and get to work with seasoned MDs, physicians, clinicians who are actually solving real world healthcare problems, bringing your technology and innovation skills to the table is really fulfilling. To see how technology and innovation is benefiting a caregiver, a patient, a clinician is really fulfilling. Not to mention, being a healthcare organization, one of the things we really focus on for our talent is being also best in class for health and wellness benefits. So those are a few things that resonate deeply with our caregivers. More importantly, campus hires that my colleague Suneela spoke about, who today are seeking careers that are more purposeful and fulfilling than, let's say, when some of us started out.
Got it. Got it. Bala, as we move to you, I also want to bring up some of the questions that we've heard. So one from Vishal on, along with new tech adoption, what are your thoughts on mid-level management, building first-line leadership and emerging leaders? If you can also weave in this.
I think it's an extremely relevant question to ask at this point of time, as GCCs are looking to do more and be more global at this point of time, right? In terms of having an influence on the global enterprise and not just operate the business as usual within the GCC. So there are a few things that I'd like to touch upon from a talent perspective in a larger frame. One, I think most GCCs are, if not all, actually have a deep connection with campuses, with educational institutions and academia, trying to influence what can make the young talent better, not just for their own GCC, but from a industry in general, right? So I think that is a given. Having said that, I still think there is a significant amount of effort that GCCs have to put in when they get talent from the industry. Even the services industry talent, the technology talent that we get, because GCCs deal with products and platforms, and the skill required is a significant amount of orchestration across the enterprise. We are the enterprise, so there is a amount of domain which is, hey, how do I invest myself in this chosen domain, and build a career from a longer term perspective in healthcare? There is a skill aspect to it. The hard skill is not an issue, like Suneela mentioned, or Murali mentioned. Upskilling is part and parcel of the game. The soft skills, especially understanding what do I do from the other side of the table, not the side of the table that I was sitting on when I was with a Cognizant or an Accenture or an Infosys, but now I'm on the other side of the table. Now, what is expected of me? How do I orchestrate? How do I decide? How do I drive? How do I strategize? those could be extremely important, particularly when folks like Vishal, who's if this is the Vishal I know, he's a leader in his own right, and these are people who are in the mid and who are breaking through into senior level positions and enterprise influencing positions. So the biggest thing that is expected of them would be, hey, how can I drive strategy? How can I come up with answers to some of the key issues, and how can I create a roadmap, and not just one, create a series of what ifs and solution paths, and then keep engaging with the rest of the enterprise leadership so that they see Vishal and others like Vishal as people who are thinking about the future of healthcare, about the future of the enterprise, and who want to give them a seat at that table, that decides where things are headed. So, love the question, and I hope that helped Vishal and everyone else, who's listening.
Oh, thanks, Bala. I think I'll go one step further and say it's not just seat, but even a voice at the table. That's where I think you are getting to. In fact, we're incredibly lucky to have a fairly engaging discussion on the comments section, and we've got some of our listeners who are also from the academia. There is Murli. I would want you to pick this question from Kirtana, right? As a student, Kirtana is curious to understand, for aspiring analyst in healthcare, what would be the right skill sets so that you can be ready for the innovation wave. Curious to hear your thoughts.
So I'll put it in a way that I would approach this. Bharath. One is I always tell students or academia that I engage with is continue to be curious, right? Very, very critical for any domain, not just healthcare. Um, Learn and adapt. Learning is not enough. You got to find a way to adapt. I mean, we're talking about AI extensively. So while we're on that, let me add a comment. There is an interesting and a funny quote, if you see in AI, which says, it's not AI that'll take your job. It's somebody who's using AI that takes your job. The same thing in the provider space. We talk about caregivers or doctors or physicians saying, it's not AI that'll take a doctor's job. It's a doctor who does not know how to use AI is where the real question is. Third is the future is all about partnerships and collaboration. So it stems from early career days, right? How good are you today is not enough. How good are you at working with others to build something, to deliver something, to create something is a very important and a relevant skill today. And in healthcare, the future is not about us doing it alone. You need your technology partners, you need physicians, you need payers, you need all kinds of partners to go deliver or transform care. So I would focus on these three important skills. I mean, skill sets are already out there. The last thing I leave with is going back to the purpose. It's always important, be it for an analyst or be it for an engineer, to know what are you solving for. Once you get your grounding right on that aspect, the rest of it becomes very easy to go do your job right. So that's how I see it, Bharat, and hopefully it'll help Kirti.
Got it. No, thanks, Murli. We had one question from Jay around how AI is helping reduce drug development costs. Suneela, curious to hear your views.
Sure. So when you look at drug development, it's a very data and effort intensive endeavor. So this is where AI can help in a big way. For example, if I start with the drug discovery, AI algorithms can analyze numerous data sets and identify which drug candidates are going to be potentially more successful, and that quickly. I mean, imagine doing all this manually versus using machine learning models. So that's the first efficiency that we build. Second is the clinical trial optimization. So AI here can enhance the designs and execution of clinical trials, first by identifying the suitable patient population. So by studying the kind of biomarkers that we need to target, you can kind of come up with, okay, this is the kind of patient population I want to go with for this protocol. Optimizing trial protocols. What is happening today in pharma is that the asks of the regulators are getting more and more tougher, and for right reasons, because we don't want a wrong candidate to land in the market. But as a result, the clinical trial protocols are becoming so complex that they are becoming impossible to recruit. And here is where AI comes to our help. We optimize trial protocols by building the right selection criteria and also the right parameters that we have to go after by predicting patient responses to treatments with the help of AI. This helps reducing the time and resource spent on trials. So this is the second level of saving. The third one, little bit to double click on the biomarker identification piece. We are all made different, like genetically, right? So AI technologies can be used to analyze genomic and proteomic data to identify biomarkers that we can go after. So typically the traditional way is we look at the impact, we look at various parameters. For example, if it's a diabetes drug, we typically we would see over months or years what is the impact on blood sugar regulation. But rather than having to wait that long, we can actually identify biomarkers which we can study and get some of the insights which probably we have to wait for months much earlier. That's your next level of study, saving. And then at the end of clinical trial, you are sitting on huge data sets, right? So managing and analyzing that data, that's where the AI tools are extremely helpful in streamlining the management and analysis of the massive amount of data that gets generated. And by automating data processing and analyze an analysis process, we can again reduce the time and also increase accuracy. Otherwise, in manual processes, one data operator has to enter the data, another has to verify. Time crunching is a big thing here when it comes to data management and analysis. And we are also in parallel always kind of using predictive analytics in the background, which helps us to forecast clinical outcomes, and that is increasing the probability of success. The biggest problem with the drug discovery today is the success rate. I mean, we always say that in this business, we learn most of the time and we succeed rarely. So AI is actually helping us increasing the probability of success, and that is not only lowering the cost and time associated. Ultimately, it is helping us to bring more drugs to more patients faster. So that's how I think, in a nutshell, you can say AI and ML is helping us.
It's like there is this often a myth that AI has to be Big Bang. Sunila, what you are referring is little by little, the little suddenly becomes a lot, right? And then you realize small drops make that mighty ocean, and it sort of adds up.
Absolutely.
Uh,
Absolutely.
we're getting some really interesting questions. We'll take one more. This is from Gora, right? And this is centered around compliance, a bit more on protected health information, personally identifiable information, and so on. Bala, do you want to share your thoughts on this?
Happy to do that. And I've seen this play out in most enterprises. Um I think they use regulatory compliance as a catch-all to sort of avoid change of any sort, right? Change is tough for them to handle. So for them to think of PHI, PII data going and being handled 10,000 miles away, albeit by your own team, is still stressful for a lot of stakeholders. I think it's the GCC leadership that needs to pick this up. When I was in my previous role as a payvider GCC leader, we had very, very specific conversations. We worked with the compliance team, the data team, the privacy team, to make sure that we had a very clear grid of what is uh, what is mandated that it cannot be done in a GCC, and what can go to a GCC. And what we found out to our surprise was that I think 95 plus percent of activities could actually go down to the GCC, wherein only probably 60% or 50% was being accepted in general practice. So I think this is something that the GCC leadership should engage with the stakeholders on and try and drive more clarity. Industry precedents are there. There is no way that any healthcare enterprise can hide behind, hey, regulatory compliance or PHI. And a lot of these healthcare enterprises, GCCs, are also going in for very, very strong industry certifications, including high trust certification. So there is no excuse anymore, for the GCCs not to get involved.
Got it. No,
I
thanks.
just want
Thanks.
to add to this, Bharat, just a comment and totally industry agnostic. But I want to just build on Bala's thing on the lead that GCC leadership needs to take. There is always going to be resistance to change in whichever organization and whichever sector we are talking about. And it's a lot up to the GCC leaders in India to keep nudging, to keep reminding global leadership what we bring to the table, how we are not only having talent today, but we have a solid technology. And that's a very potent combination, to ignore. And it's entirely up to GCC leadership to kind of keep bringing that to the forefront. Otherwise, you can just it can just be business as usual, and you can just work on process excellence, but that's not why we are here for. We are here for a larger game, and that needs to be reminded. Sorry, I thought I'll just mention that, Bharat.
No, that's a great point. We're almost on top of the hour, and we have a short segment. And my panelists, I know this was not planned in advance, but this is my turn to put you in the spot. So we have a rapid fire round on all things GCCs. We may not have a hamper at the end of it to declare a winner, but I still hope there is value out of these questions. Right. First, Murali, if from your standpoint, if you were to rate these three from an employer branding perspective, how would you rate these?
Work environment, 1 to 3.
Got it. Okay. Bala, rate the following in terms of investments and training programs. First line, Gen Z, function.
Whoa, this is tough. I would say functional leadership, because they will be the ones that drive growth across the enterprise.
All right. Suneela, what's your take on diversity, equity, inclusion, belongingness? Do you think enough is being done? Where do you think this is?
There is awareness, definitely, but I think more can be done. Surely, because there are areas where you still need people to be reminded, and some organizations actually kind of set very stringent benchmarks for themselves, like what we do in Merck, but still a lot more to be done, I believe.
Got it. Murali, one of the things that came up as GCC is the enterprise, and that means having a strong business context. Which of these would you rate as if you were to rate these three: secondments, tech-based solutions, having same definition of success?
Same definition of success, irrespective of GCC or global.
Got it. Okay. And Bala, when it comes to improving or enhancing the hiring process, rate the following.
I have always been a huge fan of referrals, primarily because, hey, this is our own employees saying, I want to work with that person, right? He or she. But I think the others are important as well. A lot of us are still very fuzzy when it comes to JDs. Particularly for GCCs, this is going to be very important because the roles are slightly different. Expectations need to be crafted crystal clear.
All right. Suneela, talent retention. What is one thing GCC should stop doing?
Stronger counter offers for sure.
Got it. Hey, Murali, how about mental health wellness? What's your take?
A lot more can be done. Improved, a lot more can be done.
Got it. Bala, how about gig and crowdsourcing platforms?
I think they are bound to increase, but I'm not a big fan.
Okay. And one last, Suneela, what's your take on upskilling?
I would say some structure is in place, but more needs to be done. And somehow I wonder that do we really take advantage of our global footprint enough?
Got it. Now we've come to the end of the rapid fire round. Thanks for being a support and taking these up. Right. As we close the discussion, and a big thanks to all our listeners for active engagement and all the questions. It was really heartening to see the curiosity and also reflecting the potential that the industry has. Once again, as I mentioned earlier, as a thank you to our listeners, we are happy to offer a readout of our recent research. In case anyone is interested, do sign up using the link. But I want to close the discussion with a lot of gratitude for our panelists. right? We heard all things about, the tail wagging the dog to having stronger purpose, having that curiosity to learn, moving beyond process expertise to both business and tech-centric context, how AI will be inevitable and it's going to be important to find responsible ways of using AI, moving from seat at the table, voice at the table, and more than anything, the repeated endorsement that GCC is the enterprise, not part of the enterprise or support of the enterprise and so on. Right. A huge thanks to our panelists. For listeners, again, this recording will also be available in YouTube in a day's time. For the questions that we couldn't answer, we will try and address it offline. Once again, thanks to all panelists for making this discussion very engaging.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us and moderating this so well. Thank you.
Thank you so much.